Good evening, everyone, and happy National Coming Out Day. I am Stephen T. Bloomer.
And I'm Wendy Stewart Kaplan, and it's really great to be here tonight. And a happy National Coming Out Day. This is a very important day. And we've got a great show for you, of course.
Absolutely. But before we get talking about that great show, if you're here on either Facebook or YouTube for the first time, welcome. If you're on YouTube, and you'd be ever so lovely, you could give us a subscribe or smash that like button, because that's how people learn more about us. One more quick thing. We at TriVersity are conducting a needs assessment survey because we're trying to update our strategic plan to recognize the fact that we live in a slightly different world than we did a couple of years ago. So I put a link in the comment section on both Facebook and YouTube, inappropriately put an apostrophe between the D and the S.
You think of everything, Stephen.
No, inappropriately did it. But the link is there. Survey will take you about 10 to 20 minutes.
It only took me 12 minutes. I'm a person that hates doing surveys.
Oh, God.
I did it in 12 minutes.
You put like a stopwatch on it?
Just like I watched it.
I'm timing this.
I did, because I hate to do those kinds of things. So it's really great. It'll really help us.
Yeah, it'll really help us. And you have the chance to win a $25 gift card.
Wow.
Again, if you're in the tri-state area, have even thought about doing something with TriVersity, whether you are LGBTQ plus or an ally, this survey is for you. You will be so helpful to us if you do that. And now I'm going to stop talking about the TriVersity Needs Assessment Survey so that we can introduce to you our next guest.
Stephen, take it away. You're on a roll here.
Okay, I'll keep going. I always love it when we have fellow lawyers in
of course
the lineup, because
you do this.
I don't really practice anymore, but it's great to have knowledgeable attorneys on the show.
Absolutely.
And Cara is no exception. She is the lead organizer of Morris County Pride. She was the first openly LGBTQ person to run for Morris County Freeholder, and I believe is running for not Morris. I'm gonna let her tell us.
Yeah, she'll tell us,
because my brain is slipping. But anyway, everyone, welcome to the show, Cara Parmigiani.
Yay!
Goodness. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's a joy to be out here with you all. And I guess the attorneys here are just multiplying like jackrabbits. And
I swear to God, is it something in the water, do you think?
I know. 1 minute you're just drinking regular water, and the next minute, whammo, attorney.
There's just another attorney, right?
You're surrounded, Wendy.
Well, indeed. Okay. Well, let's start with this. What inspired you to become an attorney, Cara?
That's a really interesting question. So my father was an attorney, and I never intended to necessarily follow in his footsteps. But the more things I did, the more I realized that I wanted to get involved and I wanted to help people. And it just so happened for me, being an attorney was going to be that person. I'm not good with dealing with blood and guts and other things. So doctor was definitely out. Veterinarian was out. So I was really like chipping away at other options, and it just stumbled, back into the law. So,
well, you know what? It makes a lot of sense, because you said you want to be able to help people. I love hearing that, because lawyers, as you know, can go either way, right? They can either help people, or there is blood and guts when they slit your throat, right? So tell us about the kind of law that you practice and the kind of people you deal with.
So, it's like all professions, right? You can have like folks that are really good, folks that aren't, but, I think the bulk of our profession, we do try and do our very best. And I certainly try to do that in my practice. And I do a lot of, business law. I help ordinary folks through their ordinary lives, and with their problems that come up. And I do some land use. I do some landlord tenant, just the usual, litigation,
So
fun.
you really run the gamut. You do, what do we call it? Heinz 57 varieties of law. In particular, have you, in terms of your cases, and I know those things have to be confidential, because my dad was a lawyer.
Oh, wow.
My dad specialized, though, back in the day, he was a civil rights lawyer, which was really cool. But he had cases that were really challenging that didn't quite turn out the way he wanted them to. Have you experienced that? You're young. Have you experienced that in your career so far?
Sometimes the law isn't fair. Even if you have a winning argument or whatever, sometimes things just don't work out. And I mean, it's like having two really good World Cup soccer teams. Somebody has to win and somebody has to lose. And that's the way the game works. And that's why it's so important to try and take alternative steps first, see if you can mediate the case, see if you can resolve it through negotiations or whatever, because if you can do that, usually, it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game where one person wins or one person loses. I feel like if you have an opportunity, maybe you can work things out in a different way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is maybe an abrupt shift, but like I said, you're the lead organizer for Morris County Pride, who had its basically inaugural celebration this year. So tell us more about that. What led you to get into leading such an effort?
Like all of my things that I get involved in, it's really a happen chance. But I was looking around what other areas were doing for their Pride celebrations, realized there really wasn't a large-scale Pride celebration happening in Morris County. And I reached out to some folks in Maplewood. They were great and lovely. And I think that was 2018. And I'd been building on this idea. And thankfully, I was able to, by 2020, come in contact with some folks from Edge, New Jersey, and they're actually right in my backyard. They operate out of Morris Plains, and they're super great and provide all kinds of services for our LGBTQ plus community. And so they were able to jump on board, as were some folks from local places like Tequila's 55 that runs drag shows out of there, and it's big in our
I
drag.
love to hear that, by the way, Tequila 55. That's great. What a great name for a bar.
Yes, right. And so we had some folks from TriVersity. Simone is outstanding, and Mom's Demand.
Right.
So we had a lot of really wonderful GAMIC, a lot of really wonderful people sponsoring us and getting through it. And what a turn it took. We went from organizing a live event that was going to be more like a festival scenario with live entertainment and vendors and food trucks and everything. And then right as we're about to finalize that, COVID strikes. And then we did an online event. And then eventually we did a drive-through drag show.
Which is amazing. I mean, the ingenuity.
It's so clever,
I mean,
right?
yeah.
It's so totally clever.
I tell you, when TriVersity, when this first hit, I mean, we could do virtual events because it was still cold and it took forever for it to have gotten warm. But then over the summer, it was like difficult to figure out what to do. And you guys mastered it, which is amazing. And so congrats for a very successful event.
Now, it just seems like from the time you came up with this idea, everybody jumped on board.
Yes. Well, I mean, I developed really, great contacts. I had run a political race the year before. And
that helped bring people, interested. They knew you already, right?
Right. And it made it easier for me to make those connections because I knew folks, and the people that I'd met were just really engaged because we didn't have anything like this in Morris County. And there is a need. There is and was and still will be. It's a Sunday. I'm like, a need for this kind of thing going forward because we need more visibility in Morris County, more acceptance, and certainly for our youth to see that there are options for them, that they're not alone while youth suicide and homelessness and all of that continues to be a problem.
Yeah.
I think it's just all the more important that people see people who are trying really hard to make things improve where they are. We can't necessarily handle everything that's going on nationally, but we can work locally to make people feel like everything's going to be okay and there's a place for them.
And that hits the nail on the head, even for us. We're TriVersity, right? We address things in the tri-state area, and of course, and I have people say to you and say to me, well, what about this? Well, what about that? You know what? I believe that you have to start with what's around you. That's where you're going to have the most effect initially. You know, there's plenty of time to expand and become larger, but certainly for us here, we have to concentrate on the things that are right here in our towns.
So, oh, sorry, Cara, go ahead.
No. I was actually just inhaling. I wasn't inhaling. I was.
Don't stop breathing, please.
Yes. I was going to ask you, what are the demographics of Morris County like in terms of kind of like LGBTQ representation, or just in general? What's the makeup of Morris County, to try to get a sense of the need for, you know, people for this Pride celebration?
That's a good point.
Yeah, you know, and that is a really good point. I don't have statistics on the number of LGBTQ plus people we have in Morris County. It wasn't even a question. It was a question on the census, sort of. But I think that, you know, Morris County has a population of about 500,000 people as of the last census. It is, out of our 21 counties, it is mid-sized, almost directly in the middle. And we have a good smattering. There are more Republicans than Democrats. So it is, but it's turning purplish in terms of representation. So we're getting there. But in terms of running for things, I mean, I feel like the rhetoric from the top directs all the way down, and sometimes folks can be quite hurtful and really challenging. I personally, on a day-to-day, don't necessarily see a lot of direct discrimination when my wife and I walk places with our toddler and other things, you know, and holding hands or whatnot. I think it's more in terms of microaggressions. But that's a problem throughout. You know, people are now starting to come to grips with using pronouns and things, but it's, you know, it's certainly not a cakewalk. So.
Understood.
Yeah, totally. So you're parents of a toddler. Now, last week we had two dads on, you know, from California, and they had twin boys, and they have a really supportive LGBTQ community with parents like they are. It was just so super supportive and really great to hear. Yeah. What has been your experience?
Well, we have really lovely friends and family. Our families are supportive of us. You know, it wasn't, you know, it's never like an easy sell. I guess I shouldn't say never, because there are some families and immediately they're like, oh, hooray, a witch in the family, you know, like in Harry Potter, which we can't talk about. I know we're like on the fence. It's like, oh, why? But no, a witch in the family, you know, and I guess there are some families that are like, phenomenal. You know, but I think sometimes it's hard when parents, and this goes back, I guess, to National Coming Out Day, right? Parents have expectations, and even now, as I am a parent, I'm very fortunate that I never have to admit to my mom that she was more right than I give her credit for, in terms of like, oh, this is going to happen to you. You know, you'll know when you're a parent. I'm like, and then suddenly you become a parent, and then it's like, oh my goodness, you know, but it does take a village to raise a child, and you do need your community. And we're very thankful that even during COVID, we have our pod people. Sounds extraterrestrial. They're not from outer space; they're neighbors, and family members who.
He's my pod person.
Yeah, we are in the same pod. I know, if anybody, because we don't want to hear from people. Wendy and Steven, you're sitting next to each other. You don't have masks on. We've been sitting next to each other since we started doing this in May or something.
Yes.
And yeah, we have our pod that we feel safe in, but. Like, you have a toddler. What did you do is your child in preschool, or what kind of setup do you have? Because, you know, little kids have a lot of energy, and now they can't. I'm telling you, I know. I have a daughter too. She's not little anymore, but my God, when they're like 2, I don't know how old your child is, but they wear you out. They run rings around us. So how have you been coping with that as a parent?
I'm very thankful that my wife does a whole lot of this, but she's more responsible for the day-to-day than I am. But certainly we work from home primarily. I do see clients at the office, but you know how it is, and she's a psychotherapist, and I
Oh, perfect.
I'm an attorney. And so between the two of us, we have different hour structures too, right? Because usually attorney is during the day and therapy is a little towards the afternoon, evening. But that being said, yes, she's almost 2 years old now. And if you could bottle that energy, you would be in the shade. I think they should have a competition to see how many things a toddler can touch in 30 seconds or under. You know, if you could get like 150 items, it would be like supermarket sweep, where you're just like, touch, touch, touch.
I haven't thought about supermarket sweep in years.
Oh my God.
I love that.
I used to love that show too, but you're right. That's what or what I call demolition derby. Not only touch, but in seconds, boom, 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 and everything's flying off of the shelf.
Oh yeah. And it's when you hear the beep, remember the fun you've had on supermarket sweep, and that's enough, Stephen. That's just for me. But but it's like that, Yeah, I mean, the next thing you know, there are crayons on the wall, and then as soon as that crayon gets put down, it's like there's something you found over there, and then that's on the floor, or something else, and there's like food everywhere.
Food everywhere too, right? But it's all fantastic. Now, growing up, were you an only child, or did you have siblings?
I have siblings. Yes, I have a brother. He's just a little younger than I am. So, yeah, the family experience, having siblings. I think I enjoyed having a sibling. But when he was first born, I tried to give him away to my grandmother. My grandmother had come over, and she'd been helping my mom to watch me. My mom and my dad watch me and take care of, our newborn, my brother. And when my grandmother was ready to leave, according to legend, that was never let go. You know what I mean? Your parents have these like clinch stories that they never let go. And this is it. And I was like, Grandma, don't forget your baby. And they're like, no, that's your brother. And I'm like,
and he's here to stay.
Right? I just can't imagine there's, the validity of that story, because at some point, wouldn't somebody have told me that's my brother? Like, wouldn't this be? But anyway, but that's the story. And that's the shock on my face. I was like, you've got to be kidding me, right? Grandma, this isn't grandma's baby. Like, what?
You wanted to give him back, essentially, right?
Yeah, but no. And I'm glad that it wasn't grandma's baby. I'm glad that my brother.
So
for a variety of reasons.
Start involving like in LGBTQ causes. For many of us, for me, it was junior high and into high school, and then after that, it just exploded all over. Tell me what it was like for you when you knew that you could be a person that could affect things out there, like in terms of LGBTQ causes.
Yeah, well, actually, so in terms of LGBTQA plus causes, I wasn't always outspoken about anything politically. It wasn't like I woke up as a kid and I thought, my goodness, I want to run for something. I want to be that person. No. In fact, I had many conversations with my dad, and one in particular that stood out. And he was like, well, blah, 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 and, you'd have to run for something. And I'm like, oh, no. Well, let's fast forward. Well, 2016 happens and all kinds of other things happen. And then I realized that, attorneys are good and bad, just like anyone else. But I mean, you do have a position where you can affect more change than a lot of other, more immediately than a lot of other jobs would allow you to do. And that's why we see so many attorneys in the realm of politics and business, in a variety of things to make change in policy. And so I thought, well, let's use what I've got to do something more. And I fell into doing stuff for LGBTQ community because I'm very obviously, even visually, a part of this community. So, and I couldn't do nothing, for my family, because my little girl is going to have to grow up in this. And I want her to grow up in a community, and everybody, any child or just anybody who doesn't even have children, you should all be a part of a community that is welcoming. And then what can we do to keep lowering those barriers to acceptance in those communities? And what will that take to do? And then I set out to try and chip away at it.
It's interesting because from what you're saying, it happened pretty, recently. Like you didn't grow up, bursting at the seams to go out there and be an activist. But I mean, look at you now and look what you can do. And you started, Morris County Pride during the pandemic. But think about that. That is just cray, right?
No, come on. She wasn't expecting a pandemic when she
Yes,
started.
that's right. Thank you, Stephen.
Right.
You know, honestly.
I didn't get to go. I got to see the pictures, and you pulled it off. And I thought, isn't that just amazing? Look what you did for the community by doing that. People really need this kind of stuff right now, and you did it. And it makes a huge difference. And as a parent, I mean, look at, you're the mom of this child. She'll have somebody she can really look up to, and that's really everything.
Well, I'm very flattered, but it wasn't just me. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing too, is that our community needs to be there for our community. And when we raise up our LGBTQA plus community, we raise up other communities as well. I mean, we had outstanding support from our Latinx community. They were super involved in Morris County Pride and other things. And we bring everybody up and with the Black community, we spoke out about issues. We didn't shy away from them, issues of the day, and incorporated that into them because, Pride is also edutainment, right? It's education and entertainment. And I think it's brilliant because it makes it accessible. It doesn't just become preaching to the choir necessarily. People like to feel included, and what's more inclusive than a party, right? Or inclusive like a drag show or something. Bring people and show people that we're just like everybody else, and there's nothing to be afraid of here. And when you engage a community, it's amazing the people that come out. I had so many folks who they really, really wanted this, and they just didn't have a mechanism of doing it. They didn't know how to assemble necessarily the right players and teammates to do it. But everybody knew somebody else. And that's the thing, is that you weren't sure if you could help, but you knew somebody. And that person knew somebody, and you were able to bring those things together. And that's how a team works. And people need to realize, like, Ruth Bader Ginsburg had passed, right? And it was devastating. It is devastating to our LGBTQ community. Absolutely. But people think, well, what can I do in my lifetime? Look at what she did in her lifetime. It was one person. One person.
Thank you.
One person can make a difference, but when everybody decides to even donate a little bit of their time to a cause, call one person to get them to vote, text one person, share, don't just click like, share a link, right? Do a little more, show up to an event. It all does add up. Even if you don't think you can move mountains, I didn't set out to move a mountain. I just set out to join our local Democratic Party, the Morris Plains Democrats, because I moved into a new town and I didn't know very many people there, and I knew some people. I mean, my family had been in the town for about 76 years doing stuff. But I mean, I wanted to know people. I wanted to know my community. And so it just became show up to a group. Okay, I did. And then things kind of snowballed from there because our chair, Tina Janest, is a go-getter. And she's like, what are we running for? And blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, and show up to TriVersity, show up to Edge Pride Center, right? Or show up to places, and you'll meet friends, you'll develop community, and you'll find something that you can do that's not super hard. I started the the Morris County Democrats LGBTQA plus caucus. It's a lot of letters, but I wanted everybody to be included, including allies, because I think allies are important.
Absolutely.
And that became like an organic kind of thing where we have people just like helping and little things. And that's all it takes. It's just a little bit of something and just everybody coming together.
Yeah, you are an amazing spokesperson for community. You are, because Stephen and I totally believe this. The challenge, and I in particular, and you too, get frustrated by, you said, show up, just come to one thing, call one person, share one thing on Facebook. And yet a lot of the times it's challenging, Cara, because people don't do that, We're very much like you. We want to encompass, we want to touch, we want to move things, we want to affect things. But a lot of the time, it really, really is challenging.
Well, people think that clicking like on Facebook is actually doing something, and
Right.
I mean, it makes me feel good that people like something. I mean, it does. I do have some ego. I haven't totally left that on the street corner. It's like I do. I remember I was going. I knocked on nearly 5,000 doors last year, and
Wow.
sometimes I'd be like, oh gosh, that I was knocking maybe 150 during the week and 300 on weekends, and I think to myself, okay, I'm just going to knock on one door and that'll just get me started. Just like one door. If I knock on one door today, at least I've knocked on more than 0 doors. So I'm going to do that thing.
We
But
look
I put one door, actually it wasn't just one door, but a couple of doors where the people would do this and they'd be like, yeah, I support women who run for things. And I said, that's nice, but I really hope you're voting also based on policy decisions because, just like there are good and bad lawyers, there are women who are more qualified than others. And so I say, well, what do you do to support women who run for things? I'm like, can you, you're going to would you put up a lawn sign? No, I'm not really into lawn signs. I'm like, okay. Do you like social media? Would you like something or share something? Well, I don't really do social media. I'm like, well, can you make a phone call? No, well, I don't really feel comfortable making phone calls. Okay, well, could you, knock on your neighbor's door or something? And well, I've got a bad knee. I'm like, and I wouldn't stop, and I wouldn't stop because now I'm on a roll. And this, Stephen, when you're doing like cross examinations, you're just like on a roll, and the answer is always going to be no, but you just keep going. And I'm like, so do you So, I mean, our campaigns always need money. You want to make a donation? Well, I'm kind of broke. And so then, but I knew from being an attorney not to ask the ultimate question, which is how exactly do you think you support women who run for things then? And this really, and the reason I took so long to walk through all the steps is these are all of the little things you can actually do to support any campaign, donations being actually the most important thing, because it's a sad world, but money does win elections. If your candidate cannot get their message out, then it's just, what do you do?
Yeah, I'm from South Carolina, and so that we're actually having a very competitive Senate race, which is almost unheard of, between Lindsey Graham and Jamie Harrison. And I read that he raised $56 million. Wow. And I'm like, and that's for a Senate race. And just that amount of money is just unfathomable. But in South Carolina, he will need every last penny.
Every penny of it, right?
Yeah, people have no idea how expensive campaigns are. I mean, until I started to run for things, people, you donate money here and there, and every little bit helps. I'm not gonna say that it doesn't, but people think that candidates just magically win. Like Joe Biden magically has all this money to have all these television ads or these lawn signs or whatever it is. Everything costs money, and it's not cheap. Yeah. Digital advertising is very expensive, and other things are very, very expensive. And even your small donation, like Bernie Sanders when he ran, regardless of whatever people think about any of these people that I'm mentioning, these candidates, it's just a way of saying that, he took $5, $10 donations on average, but you've got to keep making them, and that's a sad thing about politics in some small way, is that it is financially driven. And the way you can help is you got to put your money where your mouth is. Lobbies and other things are donating a lot of money. And if you want to be heard, a couple of bucks here and there will, I used to break it down for people, a few bucks will buy one lawn sign, and it's one more lawn sign that we didn't have before.
That's a really good way to think of it. A lawn sign will make a lot of difference. And seriously, what you said about Facebook is so easy, and it doesn't cost anybody anything to share and put something down like that.
Yeah, sharing is effectively spreading your message around, like your digital advertising. It's like saving that cost of you pushing it around other places. Right. And when people see it come from you, it's obviously a way more authentic than if it came from some bot telling them, hey, it's easier and better if you call your neighbors and tell them this is what's up. and speak out rather than, again, nobody likes that bot call. Nobody's paying attention to that phone number that says, scam. You know what I mean?
I know.
But if it's somebody that's calling you and be like, listen,
Right.
This is an issue, and we've seen that throughout Morris County and other places when it comes to pride resolutions, and the importance of those, and having folks call in and speak to people that, like, look, I know that you may not be, part of, LGBTQ, but look, this means a lot to me. It means a lot to me that you're going to do, your town wants to raise a pride flag or whatever. I hope that you'll support that initiative, or, it means a lot to me that X, Y, and Z. And, eventually people have to listen. When you get enough calls, you're going to have to start doing that. And it's important to let people know that this matters to you, but people don't know if people don't say anything.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
If people don't open their mouths.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cara, you mentioned before about the passing of Justice Ginsburg, which, I think all of us, how devastating that was. She was one of the reasons I went to law school. I was just so inspired by her.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Loved the work she did.
Yeah,
she was such a groundbreaking person. But so now we're going to have this kind of confirmation hearing. So things are about to get all crazy up in here. But in the face of that, we had two Justices Alito and Thomas, make remarks suggesting that they would reconsider Oberfeld v. Hodges, which is the gay marriage decision of 2015. And I was just curious on your thoughts about that.
Grr.
That just answers it, doesn't it?
It's just, and that decision isn't even, it's recent, but it's not that recent. That they feel like they can finally say their piece after Justice Ginsburg has passed is really alarming to me. So, because that tells me that she had a lot more power there, even to keep people from necessarily, they had an opportunity in a dissent or other things to say their piece and be done, or to say their piece at that time and be done. But now this is a dog whistle to other folks who might want to bring a similar case, and just saying, by the way, we're still on board with that, even though, there have been some justices that are now have, surprised everybody, right? Gorsuch surprised us with his last ruling, right?
Yeah.
So, but they're saying that, if this comes up, we're not going to be a surprise. We're going to choose to say, it was wrong before. We're still in that corner. You get another Supreme Court justice in here, and maybe we can undo that thing, and we can make sure that your First Amendment rights supersede rights of LGBTQ people. And that's frightening. And this goes back to, as well, why the stuff you do locally matters. In New Jersey, we have very good LGBTQ plus laws. We prevent, even before the last decision about being fired for being gay, we would protect not only gender, we would also allow you to not allow you to discriminate for gender expression, which was more than even the state of New York did, and Pennsylvania had no protections at all. Yeah. So it was really important. So to protect the full spectrum. For example, I could have, in some states, even been fired because I'm gender nonconforming in terms of like wearing high heels and doing the thing. And in law school, it was recommended to me that I could go farther and do more if I wore a pantsuit skirt, which you will not see me in. I do wear dresses for like fancy things. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just not, whatever. But
I'm totally shocked in law school that they told you that. It's a surprise to me.
Yeah, and it wasn't super long ago, and because women are still, being an attorney, it's a very conservative, I don't know, work environment, I guess you could say. It's a very old profession. It's a profession so old that, and I feel like this should be a segue. It's a profession so old that I don't have anything to end with though.
Not the oldest profession, but it's
not the oldest profession. But it's so old that you actually get a Juris Doctorate, and so it's a doctorate, and then if you pursue it further, you get a master's. I think it's the only profession I know of where you go back instead of, other things you get a master's first and then a doctorate. Here you get a doctorate first and then a master's.
I guess what's so surprising to me is with so many women lawyers now, that what you're saying, that there's actually a dress code that they still want people to abide by.
Do you?
No, I mean, it's not like they can't enforce. It's recommended.
But the fact that it's even there to begin with, you know what I'm saying?
Do you think it would risk an adverse decision if you didn't present yourself according?
And that's the way it's presented to you. You know, not necessarily like it wasn't like somebody. They hand you a sheet and it says, these are the 5 things you need to remember to do when you go to court. Suit, check, but they do, you're supposed to look professional, truly. But for women, I feel like there is that extra sub voce thing where, if a little light makeup, a little light heels, is a thing. So,
yeah. Wow. Well, it's funny. One of our guests tonight, Janet Hendrick, she said, and she's from New York, she said some DA offices request that women wear skirts or dress suits. So there you go.
It's, and I don't have a problem with dressing professionally and respecting the profession that you're in, but I think there's room for everybody, and I wear suits. So.
Absolutely.
So, Cara, what are the family law implications if Oberfeld is overturned? How will that affect your practice potentially?
Well, I don't particularly practice in the arena of family law. I do some, but and I don't specialize in LGBTQ plus litigation. So I don't know how this will work out, because sometimes these decisions too are very narrowly tailored. Like the wedding cake decision, right? That was more narrowly tailored, but I really don't know. But again, New Jersey had gay marriage before it was national. New Jersey still has very progressive LGBTQ rights for even healthcare, and making sure that if you need sexual assignment surgery of any kind and it's covered for any other reason under your health care, you can still be covered for that. But I think it's important because next year we have a gubernatorial race, a race for governor. Gubernatorial, it sounds funny.
I love that word though, gubernatorial.
You got to keep saying it. It's like, throw it around. So it's important, to check out what people are going to be standing for on that, because again, that kind of race right now, for example, they're working presently in New Jersey to codify certain elements of Roe versus Wade. So just in case another case comes up, at least in New Jersey, a woman will still have access to, medical assistance that she desires, or is needed. So that's so important. And so people don't realize that your state, even if the nation does something, and don't get me wrong. I mean, there is, Steve, right? Federal law and its intersection with state and local law, and who has, superiority on that. But there is a lot that states can do. There is some flexibility, and so in the worst case scenario, you've got to buckle down your state, you've got to buckle down your county and your town to make sure that even if something happens elsewhere, and we hope that it doesn't. But if it's left back to the states and some questions back to the states, then we've got to make sure that your state does the right thing.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, I think, Cara, the pandemic's been a great example of that. I live in New York, and New York State, they really took the bull by the horns. We had COVID testing coming out right away. You were able to get it. You had full support. And a lot of it came from our governor, whereas other places, as we all know, look what happened in Florida. And there you go. That's a good example of a state that someone told me yesterday that I didn't realize it was completely opened up again. So how did they go from a really huge spike to now completely opened up again? It makes no sense at all. So each state really does determine the quality of life for the people that are living there.
True.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cara, another abrupt shift. Can you tell me more about Pony and Ponies at Law?
Yeah, I had the puppy pony program down. What is the puppet pony program?
Oh my goodness. Well, you're talking about that actually is a segue that we can do. So let's backpedal on that. Okay, so
We're going to backpedal.
You were asking me earlier about where you're saying that they're good attorneys, bad attorneys, whatever. Well, when I was growing up, my dad was an attorney, and he was an assistant prosecutor. And I always felt that my dad was doing the best job that he could do, and that he was really trying to do more for his community. And so but going to school, people would say things like, "Oh, your dad is a snake, and your dad is blah 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 blah," because there are all these negative stereotypes that people get from lawyers. And granted, some people have had some really bad experiences. I get it. But anyway, I always thought my dad was doing the right thing, and it was an honorable profession. So then later one night, I was goofing around with my brother, and when I was just saying, like, wouldn't it be funny if, I don't know, and we were sober too, and this is why this is that, like, wouldn't it be funny if you had a law office and it was run by ponies, and if they answered the phone, wouldn't it be funny if they answered it, Pony and Pony, ponies at law, pony speaking, no, you want to the other pony. And from there, it kind of developed. And what I tried to do with that, so about 16-minute episode, and there are webisodes about like what the average Joe wants to know about the law. And I felt like it was important because I feel like the law shouldn't be a black box that people can't understand, and that there are some lawyers out there who do believe in real justice, and they're stunned when the law doesn't work. Because sometimes the law isn't fair, and that's a reoccurring theme, at least in our 16-minute episode. And these ponies have this naive sense that everything's going to be okay and the law should be fair. They are taken aback when it isn't, but then they try and work hard to see what they can do to make it fair, or at least the outcome more equitable. And I think that that's something that I want people to walk away with. And they don't talk down to people. And in the webisodes, they sit down with a professor from Seton Hall Law, and they'll discuss something like, what is a copyright? Where do the children go in a divorce? What is, can I write my own will?
Those are great questions that regular people like myself ask all the time.
Right. And so I think that, people have questions. They're afraid to ask them, or, lawyers seem stuffy, or they seem like they won't get it, or whatever a lot of these negative stereotypes are. But these two puppet ponies, they're trying to help break down those barriers, help you approach legal education in a way that doesn't make you feel less than, and in a way that even if you were like, legal education, yawn, at least you might be like, puppet ponies, let me check this out. I wonder what is a copyright, or whatever. And
so are there actual pony puppets?
Oh, they are puppets.
They're actual. Oh my God.
They're big. Actually, they're the size of a 2-year-old. They fit into 2-year-old clothing. They are voiced and acted by professional puppeteers. Daniel Fay and Kane Prestonback are puppeteers. I did this while I was in law school. I started this, which seems like another crazy timing thing that's not like appropriate. Is not in your first year of law school. You do not run a puppet program.
But I love that. You really took a chance with that. It's so brilliant for a regular person. Somebody like me would love to watch it would be like watching Mr. Ed. You know what I'm saying?
Cara, where can people go to watch the episodes?
It's if you go to YouTube, it's Ponies at Law.
Okay.
Spell it out, ATLAW, or poniesatlaw.com. And you can come and check them out. And I think we shot all of the webisodes. I think I just graduated, or I can't remember when we shot them, but all in one day. I
love it. You just knocked it out.
And our puppeteers Daniel Fay and Kane Prestamac, they're not attorneys, but they worked very hard to understand what we were talking about, and they're brilliant guys. Very, I can't speak more highly of them. I'm just like in awe. But they they helped work us through this, and just like you're in the back room where you guys are talking about how it cramped the table you guys are. Well, visualize this. I mean, we had the 2 puppeteers over there, right? And then they're underneath the table, and a table that small typically, and then sometimes under the table with them, right? And so we have 3 people under a table and arms up, and everything, and it's a real experience, and it was life-changing, actually. I really enjoyed Ponies at Law, and we are working on turning it into a musical, but we just need the right people behind us, so feel free to reach out.
Ponies at Law, the musical.
Don't tell my wife, though, because if she's like, one more project, Cara. No.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
you're done with the project. So just question, does it make you laugh or maybe even annoy you when people post on things, no copyright infringement intended, as if that will save them from any legal responsibility?
Yeah, we see that. Don't we see that on Facebook all the time?
All the time.
Yeah, and explain that to me. I know we have to do it, but to Stephen's point, I mean, is that even anything at all? Is it?
So copyright isn't one of my practice areas. We did have, I was fortunate enough, though, while in law school, I had a Professor O'Shea who actually does answer this question for us. Well, not that specific question, but our copyright, trademark, and patent questions that are on Ponies at Law. And he was formerly counsel to Revlon in their intellectual property department. So he's certainly very knowledgeable on the subject. But yeah, I mean, look, somehow magically disclaiming what you've done as not being in violation of it's like getting pulled over for speeding. It's like, I said I'm not speeding. Okay. It's like, these are not the droids you're looking for. This is not the copyrighted material that you were thinking it was, but it doesn't not work like that, unfortunately. A lot of people don't necessarily realize that too. A lot of when you're doing things that violate people's copyrights, I mean, these are typically people who have worked very hard in the arts, and we don't do a lot to support the arts,
right?
And they're trying to make a living too. It's like lawyers and legal advice, right? My advice is what I sell, right? It would be like walking into a bakery and taking all the having a free cupcake and just being like, whoa, I'm just going to walk in here and take this cupcake. And the baker's like, but I need to keep the store open. When you do that for a copyright, people don't realize that they are actually like taking something from somebody, something that they make money off of to live. So
from what you're saying, it's not worth anything. Those words aren't worth anything at all.
I don't, it depends on your, it's facts, right, Stephen? It's fact sensitive for a lot of things. But if you're telling me that you're just taking a picture from the internet and you've not attributed it, or you didn't get it from a site where they like Unsplash, you can get graphics from Unsplash for free, stock photos for free.
Stock photo places, yeah.
And if it doesn't require attribution or whatever, you don't have to attribute it. But saying that, you've gotten this from, let's say, Getty Images, and you took it from Getty Images because you like the picture of the downhill skier, and now you're planning on using it, and you're like, well, but the copyright doesn't apply here. Well, it's.
No.
It doesn't even make logical sense that you can be able to do that. It doesn't even, So I think if you're planning on breaking the law, just ask yourself, does that even sound like it passes the laugh test? I got
no, that was the answer I was looking for. So, Cara, we have a question from Simone, and she asked, how did your martial arts training add to your overall discipline, or were you disciplined prior to that?
Wow. Yeah, Simone and I had practiced martial arts Long time.
How long have you been doing it for?
This August was 20 years.
Oh
Wow.
that is wow.
I've always been, so we're talking about special abilities. My special ability is that I'm very organized. And so I was the kind of kid who, as soon as I got the assignment, would come home and do that assignment, even if it's done, 3 weeks away. I would stay up, whatever it took, or do it over the weekend, immediately, and just get it done so that I didn't have to worry about it, hand it in, whatever. I was always that kind of nervous person that always had, something else was on the burner that I have to get it done. Today is Sunday, and in preparation for Monday, I actually spent a few hours working just so that I could kind of get ahead on Monday so that I wouldn't have to, so I could have an easier Monday, because the idea that I have other things to do kind of does that to me. So I was always very disciplined about that, but it was weird because, I do think martial arts helped in that. It helped me to, as you test for different ranks in martial arts, I think it helped me to realize that how to perform under pressure of people watching you and rating you. And examining what you're doing. And I think that helps also in the profession of law, where I have to stand up in front of people in court, make an argument that sounds cohesive, is persuasive, is spontaneous, and then sit back down and be done. And because you may prepare an opening and a closing, but you certainly can't prepare the middle ground, which are spontaneous questions that you may have to ask, objections, or other stuff that occurs in the middle, and you have to be prepared and ready to go and stay focused and calm enough to be able to be in the moment, enough to be able to respond. You can't be thinking about 80 other things.
Helped you really be in the moment, that kind of discipline.
Yeah, and I only can do it for that. There are only clinch moments, but I think that I did some fighting in the ring, and I did some competitive martial arts, and it was like chess with consequences, I think, because if you think about one other thing while you're doing it, you're going to get hit, or you're going to get thrown, or you're going to get something, and a negative consequence immediately. And so for 2 minutes at a time, or whatever at a time, or 5 minutes at a time, you have got to be 100% in it, and you have to be able to do that. And I can't always do it, but with enough stress, I can get there, and I can turn that on, and that is a very practical skill to have. And public speaking as well. You're waiting to go, and you're like palpitating, whatever. It's going to be the same stump speech you've done before, but the new audience, and you don't know, and the guy's doing his before you, and you're ready to go, and then you get up there, and you're like, oh my goodness, and everybody's looking at you and waiting, and it's like, and go.
It's so funny. I got a new Fitbit recently, and I used to have one, but the new ones have a heart rate monitor, and I was doing an interview, and it was I was just kind of looking at it and seeing the heart rate rise as it got closer.
You were watching your Fitbit while you were doing it.
Well, no, I wasn't doing the interview yet. I was waiting for it, and I was like, oh, the heart rate's climbing and climbing.
Oh.
So Cara, one question I want to ask. So again, this is National Coming Out Day, and if someone was sitting before you right now and they were contemplating coming out for whatever they're coming out with, whether they're LGBTQ or otherwise, what would you say to them?
It's going to be okay. That's what I'd say to them. Is that, I've been reading on Facebook other people's coming out stories for today's coming out day. Last night, my wife and I, we scored some together time, and we watched Hannah Gadsby and her comedy. It's not really a comedy, it's kind of a comedy, but about it's called Nanette, and I think it's on Netflix. And if you have an opportunity to watch that, Hannah discusses her coming out story and her experiences through the lens of comedy and what that meant for her, and being gender nonconforming in terms of appearance, and being a lesbian. And I thought it was a really powerful story. And so if you have an opportunity, this is a quick plug for our Netflix show, but Hannah Gadsby.
No, it's great.
And Nanette. And that kind of colored my perception of what I wanted to say today too, because I was thinking about this, And I had another gentleman come up to me, and he had been doing some work for me, and he comes up to me and he's like, my daughter is just came out to us, and I was a little upset that she didn't come out to us earlier. And it's so hard. People who have never had to do it will never really understand this, because it's hard with all the hormones of being a kid anyway to understand these complex feelings. They're very complex. And when we have everything in the media and everything else showing us that, every story you've grown up with is a heteronormative story and dialogue, right? Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, all of these stories, even Shrek, right? It's all heteronormative. It's and that you have a story that's not their story. The handsome prince is not going to come for some of these people, or maybe the handsome prince will come, but you are, it's not, it's two handsome princes or whatever. Or maybe nobody's handsome or everybody's handsome. I don't know. That's not the important part, but it's so hard when you have a script that's always written by somebody else, and we don't have a lot of coming out stories for children. I don't think necessarily, like, for them to even use as a guideline. When I was, I came out much later. I think I was like 20 something or other.
Yeah.
And people always knew before me. I guess I was bullied quite a lot for being gay, even though I didn't know that I was always bisexual. And that was its own special challenge, because sometimes I'm straight and sometimes I'm gay, right? And I really, that's not fair either for folks. So, but at the end of the day, you will develop, and so this goes back to, what would I say to people, right? You will develop people who will love you, and people who will cherish you and respect you. And even if initially everything doesn't work out the way you would hope it would, you're not alone. There are people that are fighting for your rights every single day. Every single day. There are people that are ready. There are shelters. There are people that are ready to take you in, to help you get back on your feet. I was fortunate enough to work with so many trans individuals, and they've expressed to me about their struggles in their community. But the more we're able to be visible and come out and be proud, and I know religion carries a particular burden for some folks, where the religion and upbringing hasn't been conducive to their coming out. And you're afraid of losing people. You're afraid of losing people who have loved you your whole life, and now may not, you're concerned that they will not love you anymore. And you will not live up to their expectations. You'll no longer make them proud, because now you're this other thing that you didn't have any power to control. But it's going to be okay. I really mean that. Things will work out. There is a place for you. There are pride centers. There are even attorneys who are ready to help you dedicate their time and energy. We have, in the New Jersey Bar Association, I was fortunate enough to join that section, and we have so many wonderful folks in our LGBT section who are working with and for people, and there's always a place, but you have to reach out if you need help. But if you do, we'll be there, and people will love you because you're lovable. You didn't do anything wrong.
Amen. Really, you couldn't have said it any better.
Yep. Because I mean, whether it's your family from blood or the family you'll make, we love you. We're here, and
Yeah, you didn't do anything wrong. You're not made wrong. You didn't eat the wrong peanut butter and jelly sandwich or whatever. Nothing happened to you that wasn't intended to happen. And you don't have to change anything about yourself. You're fine the way you are. Unless you're wearing dirty socks, change them.
I mean,
that's a deal breaker.
That's it. If you let yourself go from COVID, fancy yourself up a little. No. Right? Everybody's just dressed from the waist up, So.
So, Cara, before we go, are there any last things you might want to
Yeah.
share? Any plugs you might want to make?
Yeah. What's forward for you? I want to know, like, what's next year and the year after and the year after that. What's your plan?
Well, so I'm running in Morris Plains for Borough Council.
Cool.
So it's only 23 days left until the election at this point in time.
Oh.
I'm encouraging everybody. Nationally, our LGBTQ people, we just don't vote. We don't vote enough. A lot of people think that it's not worth it to vote because your voice won't be heard or whatever. I assure you that is not the case. You must vote, please. If you do one thing, and then if you can do one more thing, text one friend.
I love that.
Send one text to a friend and say, hey, did you vote? In New Jersey, you have a mail-in ballots. Did you return your mail-in ballot? And it's really, you feel motivated after that, send 2 texts, but just get your ballot in, check and make sure that you've got it, put it in a secure Dropbox or put it in the mail and be done with it. And we can, and even in your local race, if you don't know who's running in your town, find out. Google it. Everybody's on Facebook every 15 seconds. You will find the answer. Even your local elections. We talked about this earlier. It's important. It's easier than you think.
Well, wonderful. Well, Cara,
thank
you
Thank
so
you.
much for coming on tonight.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Great. Thank you. Your energy and really important message that each person can touch one other person and make something happen. And, saying here tonight, you're part of the LGBTQ community, get out there and vote. Do it.
Amen. Please vote, everyone. Thank you, Cara. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we will see you next week.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.